Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 5th episode of the Startup Boston podcast, where I interview entrepreneurs, investors, and influencers in the Boston startup community to uncover actionable advice and stories from their experiences. In today's episode, I interview Sam Saltis, founder of Core DNA. Sam moved to Boston from Australia to start what is his second company, a SaaS business that allows companies to control all of their digital properties from one dashboard and without the need to re-platform in the future. Sam talks about why he chose Boston, how he gets through those moments of self-doubt every entrepreneur faces, the benefits of SaaS, amongst many other topics. As always, I provided links to everything mentioned in the show notes, which can be found at startupbostonpodcast.com. Enjoy the episode. Thank you so much, Sam, for coming in today. I really appreciate it. I want to get into talking about Core DNA and SaaS. First, tell us a little bit about your background.
It's good to be here, Nick. My name is Sam Saltis. I'm a new immigrant to Massachusetts, specifically Boston. My background started over 25 years ago. I graduated and entered the workforce in a large bank in Australia called the ANZ Bank. I was recruited as a technical person and worked on systems, card systems, AS400s, applications that were written in RPG, which most people don't know. And then spent 11 years there and had very exciting times. I travelled over to India and set up the offshore division for the bank. And I spent 3 years there, and after that I got involved in the Y2K project, did an MBA so I could lose a bit of the propeller. I still have a hat, and then decided one day that I was going to start a business. And I walked into my boss's office and said, I have learnt everything I need to learn to start a business. I know everything there is to know to start a business. I've even got all the management books that I need. I'm going to go and start a business. And he just looked at me and said, are you mad? And so on the start of 2000, I had no job. I wasn't really sure what kind of business I was going to start. And I spent quite a bit of time thinking about it, doing some consulting with Compaq, advising them on how to deal with banks. And then one day I decided that we would put together a technology business that aggregated telephony services into buildings. Bought fiber optic cables into the building and shared the telephony with everyone. And based on that business, we started rolling it out into shopping centres around Australia. And every one of the retailers that we spoke to said, we want a website. And of course, when you're a small business, you never say no. So my background was technology and architectures, and I put together a interesting platform that I thought this will be really quick for us to roll out websites, and we don't have to employ any more people, and we can share the software with everyone. They all run on one code base, and I can keep rolling out more and more sites and not need to add more people.
Did you already know how to make websites?
No, not really. I was much more experienced in foreign exchange systems and back office accounting systems and large-scale enterprise products. But I learnt, I found a language called PHP that everyone said, yeah, well, this is an open source language. And I found Apache for the operating system or the web services. And I then grabbed a couple of kids out of uni and said, let's try and do this and build something that we can actually scale both vertically and horizontally.
So you were learning as you were going.
I was fumbling as I was going. Fumbling as I was going. So the interesting thing about doing an MBA was that it taught me all the things that were required, the pieces that were required to build a business plan, build an operational plan. So the funny story I have is that I had over 50 versions of a business plan, and yet I hadn't launched my business.
Wow.
So it took me, I think it was about 20 months 18 to 20 months before I made my first dollar. So you can imagine all the heartache that came with that, having to move back home, having to have interesting conversations with ex-girlfriends because my work was so important. And yeah.
How did you make it through those 18 to 20 months without
being very tight? Like you basically, you know, and I was thinking about today's discussion and I thought, you know, what makes an entrepreneur and a person who you have to be able to go over the hardships. So that's what I called Startup 1.0. That was my first business. And so what happened was during that time, you had this crazy belief that what you were doing was there was a bright light at the end of the tunnel. There was something there that you were going to achieve. No matter what was going on in front of you, you always kept looking further forward. And so eventually you cracked your first customer, and once your first customer came, the second one came, and the third one, and all of a sudden it started to snowball. All of a sudden you're employing people, and now you're thinking, well, I have to employ more than one or two customers. I have to win more than one or two. I've got to get a sales team, and organically it started to grow until today it's over 40 people. I've installed a CEO in Melbourne, and I'll tell you a little bit about that. And the business is running quite nicely.
Was there a point along the way, in the beginning, did you have your doubts of whether or not it would work, you know, especially when you weren't making any money?
I have my doubts every day. I think that's part of being an entrepreneur. It's not that you're half empty. You always have to go, am I doing the right thing? Question yourself every day. So sort of to bring it forward to today and why I'm here in Boston, I arrived at a point mid last year where I saw the product getting bigger than the services business. And I thought to myself, well, hold on. I can scale the product, but I can never scale the services business because for every customer I added, I'd have to add resourcing behind it, whether it be an account manager, whether it be more salespeople. It wasn't a business that you could kind of bring on thousands of customers and not have to scale your staff accordingly. And so I divided the two businesses and we launched Core DNA as a separate company. And instead of launching it into Australia, I asked my wife if she wanted to come and live in sunny Boston, and we came over here with my daughter, and we've launched it into Boston as a starting point throughout the whole for the rest of the country.
Why did you choose Boston?
I did a tour around the US before I decided on what city. So the tour started in the West Coast, LA. I had 4 meetings in each of the cities. And LA, I just found they weren't aligned to me from a values point of view. I couldn't understand them. I was a bit concerned about doing business in LA. In the Valley, everyone keeps asking me, why didn't you go to the Valley? In the Valley, it was all about buying and selling businesses. I couldn't see myself building a business in the Valley and then maybe doing some funding or meeting people to either grow my business or sell my business. In Chicago, it was all about manufacturing. It's still very much a manufacturing city. We'll skip Boston. New York was just too fast-paced for family, so I couldn't get the right business and family balance. And then finally, I went to Dallas. And we come from Australia. We don't have guns in Australia. And when your Uber driver picks you up with a handgun exposed in a holster on his pants like a cowboy, I kind of thought I would get myself in trouble because we're a bit abrupt, up front. So then back to Boston. Boston's probably as close to Melbourne, where I come from, of any city in America. It's just got, outside of the extremes of climate in terms of winter, it's just a great place. So good schools, good family environments. Here we are.
So when did you first get here?
November. November. We've been here just over 6 months.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
So we're very fresh. And, so we came over with 4 suitcases. We packed our house up in Australia. We put it in storage. And we came over with 4 suitcases and had to find a place to live. So we found a place in Brookline. Had to find a school. Had to then go and buy furniture, cutlery. But I mean, philosophically, my view is that this is a great adventure that I'll always remember. So it's important to live these things that I call bookmarks. So this year, my bookmark is I moved to America and I've launched my business. And so when I look back on my life, I'll be able to say, hey, look what I've achieved in terms of my bookmarks. Because most of the other stuff you just don't remember. You know, whether you got a great pay rise, those things get lost in time. You remember the things that you really do. They're a bit out to the left or right.
What are the bookmarks? Are they like the pivotal moments in your life?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
they're the things that you either set yourself a goal for, or you aspire to, or you fall into. I mean, I hear a lot of talks from people who say, everything I've done has been planned, and I can't profess to that. I can say that I've tried to plan quite a considerable amount of what I've done, but in some cases, the moon and the stars and everything else and the sun is aligned, and all of a sudden you find yourself falling into a situation and you go, this is going to be a great experience. I'm going to strap myself in and go for the ride.
Enjoy the ride. Let's talk a little bit about SaaS.
Right.
So explain to everyone what SaaS is.
SaaS is what they term software as a service. It basically is a paradigm that is emerging where software no longer is built custom for you, and everything around it is customized and then launched into some infrastructure, and you modify it yourself. With the SaaS platform, it's like a community of people who together contribute through their ideas to the growth of the software, and they all benefit from the software, and they get all the infrastructure, all the upgrades, all the bug fixes, and innovation thrown in for a fixed price per month.
Okay, so what are some of the reasons that a company should switch from their current infrastructure to SaaS?
So it depends. It's company specific, but when it comes to SaaS, some of the key benefits of SaaS is that you can benefit from things like enterprise infrastructure. So if you look at our product, for someone to have, say, enterprise infrastructure will cost them hundreds of thousands of dollars because of the requirements, not only in infrastructure, but also the staffing to manage it in terms of networks, security, optimizations. So there's a benefit in terms of being able to participate in a bigger, better, stronger infrastructure and software platform. The second benefit is that you get the innovation constantly. So you're never left behind. So one of the key things of custom building things is that you actually, once you've finished, and with over 20 years of experience, I've never seen software where someone has said, we're finished. It's great. We're not touching this again. You're always going to be evolving software. So under a SaaS platform, you don't have to worry about the evolution of the software. Someone else is taking care of it, and it allows you to focus on your business. And I run into a lot of companies who say, I'm going to use this platform. It's free, and I'm going to customize it for myself. And I look and I say to them, is it really what you want to be doing? Is that your business? If you're a software company, I understand it. Or if you're a development company and you have a group of developers there, sure, use them, modify it, innovate it, but you're never going to get one small team being as good as a whole community of people that can contribute to the development of a platform or a community of customers. So we have over 400 customers. We've built over 2,000 websites. We know what can go wrong. We know best practice. And every time we bring on a new customer, we add that knowledge back into the system.
Is SaaS best suited for certain types of companies or certain industries more than others?
It's kind of interesting. Many people think SaaS is well placed for startups or small businesses, and you've got e-commerce platforms like BigCommerce or Shopify, who are a great example of that, and Squarespace, who are a great example of CMS platforms at the entry level. But SaaS is suited to all companies. It doesn't matter how big you are. It just what really drives it is what you want to be able to do, and whether speed's important or whether you need the IP that you may develop. So for me, I would always say to people, if the IP and the technology you're developing is really something that you want to keep and is important to the business, then for all intents and purposes, go and build something yourself and use developers and build that IP out. But if you're running an intranet, or if you're running an e-com, or if you're running a marketing website or a community website, how much IP can there be in that stuff that no one else has developed?
For the companies that it would most benefit, what do you think is preventing them from switching? Is it just the idea of change?
I talk about this paradigm where I say design, build, and destroy. So most companies look at the way, for example, in the web space, they look at it as, I've been told I have to go and pick a platform. Once I pick a platform, I have to design something. I have to scope what I need. Someone has to customize that platform for me. Then they have to build whatever I've designed into the platform, and then they'll support it for me for a period of time until it becomes out of date. And once it becomes out of date, I've got two choices. I can either retrofit all the new features into this customized piece of stuff that I have, or I can scrap everything I've done and re-platform. Now, when you talk to people, they say this paradigm is exactly the paradigm that should be running. There's no other paradigm. And I think people don't understand that there's an emerging paradigm where you can design, build, and continually evolve and never have to re-platform again. So when it comes time to say, oh, I'm tired of this content, I want to start something new, or I want to shift my shopping cart to a better looking design, well, you shouldn't have to throw out the platform. You just take away the design, the UX, you recraft the UX, and you can build it on top of what you currently have.
And it's always up to date, right? There's no...
You're never behind. We take care of things like security. We have hackers in the team whose job it is to find holes in the system. We have load balancers. We have WAFs. We have all these acronyms that I keep getting told them. There's always new ones coming out. And do we really need that? Yes, it's part of our stack. Okay, fine. So we do take it quite seriously, and therefore the little guy can benefit from really great technology that they otherwise wouldn't be able to afford on their own.
And it really allows the companies to focus on their product and their business rather than...
Well, shift instead of... So it was quite interesting. I was reading something from Forrester recently. Instead of spending their money redesigning the wheel, i.e. being the technology, don't spend that money in the technology. Spend it in marketing services, or spend it on things that are going to generate more traffic or generate more sales. Mm-hmm. Replatforming doesn't generate more sales. It's just an infrastructure. It's the plumbing. It's not going to aid in more sales. Now, a redesign will help in more sales, or redesigning the UX, or putting out landing pages, or running campaigns. That's where the focus should be. And yet you find that even when it comes to web builds, you find that the customer spends 3/4 of the time worrying about the aesthetics and the technology, and spends no time in consideration of the content or how the person is going to go from A to B, or what the segments are, or what the stakeholders are. All they worry about is, does it look good? Yeah, my friend said it looks good. That's great. I mean, and even at the enterprise level, you've got to satisfy this whole, is it a new experience? Is it something that someone else hasn't done? And yet getting them from A to your outcome is kind of secondary. Although some smart companies are actually picking that up and focusing on, let's get the technology out of the way. Let's get focused in on what we have to do to win customers.
Are there any big trends right now happening in the SaaS space?
I think there's some significant trends in terms of pricing and the VC market. Everyone's been talking about how the unicorns are changing, and look, I think in the marketing technology space, I think what we're seeing is an explosion of products. So everywhere you look, someone's creating a new platform or a new piece of technology to do a specific thing. And what's happening is we're getting all these little best of breed of everything, and it's now starting to create a real complex ecosystem for people that need to run web properties. So once upon a time, you go, okay, I've got my e-commerce. I would set up my e-commerce platform. I might have a CMS. I might have a blog. I might have some analytics. I might do some retargeting. And now all of a sudden, you're adding a whole raft of other tools all over the place. I want a pop-up window to talk to you. I want a tool that's going to throw up other pop-ups as you go through the content. I want to measure. I want to report. All of a sudden, we look at the ecosystem, poor end users having to log into 10, 15 different applications to be able to get a sense of what's going on for them. And again, that's another one of our benefits in terms of we consolidate a lot of those applications into one dashboard, and you can use them in one spot rather than log in here, copy data from there, paste it over there.
Mm-hmm. So now let's talk more about Core DNA. Can you say what Core DNA does?
So it's interesting to note Core DNA was born inside a digital agency. Mm-hmm. So there's many digital agencies out there that had this idea that they would use their own technology. Back in the early 2000s, everyone was like, I'm building the next piece of technology and you have to use my custom proprietary system. How many times I hear that? It drives me crazy. And so what happened over time, systems, a lot of companies used their own, and then when open source came, many of them dumped their own technology because it's very expensive to run a technology team to keep innovating your platform. And then we grew the platform. We kept growing it through the open source days. And then all of a sudden, the market started shifting with SaaS into we know how the real truth in terms of open source and its real cost of ownership, and we need a better way. And all of a sudden, SaaS became is becoming at the forefront. So what we've done with Core DNA is over 15 years, we've built out over 80 applications that all work together in one umbrella on one dashboard and allow you to go in and pick what applications you want to use for whatever purpose it might be. And we've solved lots and lots of different problems, and you can manage all your digital properties from one spot and flick between them. So at the end of the world, that's what the platform does. And we offer it to people at a fixed price per month.
What benefit can companies get from it that they might not realize?
The first benefit is that it's production ready to go. So you get off the bandwagon of design, build, and destroy. You can move onto this platform and you'll never re-platform again. So we've got a customer that's been with us for over 14 years, and they've just innovated their UX and the design layer every couple of years. They've added new features. When mobile started coming out, they then said, hey, we need responsive. Now with, the Internet of Things, they're saying, what does this mean? And I said, nothing yet, but eventually, we'll have the ability for people to use the product across all devices. And so so they're able to stay up to date with technology without having to continually invest in recreating it. Another key benefit is that it gives them the ability to take what they need when they want it, rather than have to build it all up front. So most agencies, when they visit a customer, they end up saying, hey, give us your requirements. Well, my requirements change. My requirements may change from year to year because my business changes. So Core DNA allows you to grow and expand as your business changes and evolves. So it's never static.
Let's say a company currently is in that design, build, destroy. How seamless is it to move from that to Core DNA?
So it's pretty simple. It would be a case of taking the data and copying it into the platform. So it's a very easy to use admin panel, like most CMSs today. Mm-hmm. And then it really be, would you like to use the existing design, or let's build a fresh design out from scratch? And we would use one of our partners to do the services to build it, and you could start from day one. So as soon as you say, hey, I want to get on this platform, we could have a basic theme running for you, and you could start copying your content over. And in the meanwhile, your designers are designing the UX, are designing the flows, and while you're putting in content, so you can do things in parallel.
So with using the Core DNA platform, you can tailor different experiences for different users. Is that right?
That's right. It's got personalization engine built in.
So how does that work?
So every piece of content can be tagged for a particular person or group. So you can create an unlimited number of groups, and within those groups you can then tag any content. So whether it be a page, a news article, a help item, a product, a discount code, a payment gateway, you're able to tag it. And when that person comes through, you're able to give them a complete one-to-one experience if you want that. Or you can give a group of people that experience. And the example I use, I have in our demo, Mr. Good Customer and Mr. Bad Customer. and Americans laugh at it. It's actually quite funny. I go, let me show you the bad customer experience. And you see that, there's no such thing as a bad customer. I said, okay. So the Mr. Bad Customer comes in and prices are going up in the e-com. The news is really bad. It's telling him how the exchange rates have changed and we've had to move prices up. When they go into the help area, there's all this help about having to pay up front, not getting any credit. We don't offer credit. And then when Mr. Good Customer logs into the same system, the system changes look and feel. It looks more inviting, and it has all the credits that Mr. Good Customer can get. And by the way, there's a special for you today, buy one, get one free, and you've got a discount on this, and life's really good. So it's quite fascinating to see when you can show these differences on the same platform.
How does it decide who's a bad customer and who's a good customer?
So there's two types of ways in which personalization is applied. You either decide as the administrator, so you can go in and set up all the segments and who belongs in the segments, or they can self-select. So self-selection into a segment generally happens for things like interest groups. So when someone says, I love rock and roll and I don't want to see classical music, you can drive a pure rock and roll experience for them. So all the information and the experience is driven around what their interest is.
Do you find that a lot of your customers take advantage of doing this personalization?
I think about probably 40% do. And those 40% are the ones that really have sat down and thought about their customers. They understand it because it's not a technology issue. It's generally a business issue in understanding your segments and being able to create these experiences. A lot of companies struggle just to create an experience. They're like, I like it. That's the way I want it. But you're not a representative of the customer that comes here. So kind of moving that thought pattern around is quite difficult in some cases.
Does the personalization allow them to drive more revenue for their products?
Yeah, it does. Because the 80-20 rule, like most of your revenue comes from 20% of your customers. So it allows you to really focus in on those 20% and do more for those people, whether it be send them better newsletters, whether it be engage with them much more around the things that they're interested in.
What are you most excited about for Core DNA's future?
I think that the interesting thing for me, the more I see platforms being collapsing or companies finding themselves in real problems when it comes to the way they've built out their platforms, I see that what we're doing has a real bright future. Because we're in elephants, right? We're amongst elephants. We're a little baby jumping around, making a lot of noise. But around us are some very, very big elephants. And so it's fun to play with the elephants, but you've got to watch yourself so you don't get squashed. So part of my drive as an entrepreneur is to have these challenges and push myself. So when it comes to the future of Core DNA, it's all about, I want to see the best for it. I want to see it. I want to see it out there. I want to see it used. I want people to get the advantages that I envisaged along with the whole dev team of what we think it can do.
Yeah. When companies are designing their digital experience for their customers, what mistakes do they tend to make?
Well, a lot of people think that they have to reinvent the wheel. I think in many cases, a shopping cart, there's only certain ways a shopping cart can be built. Now, you can have some minor, nuances around that shopping cart, but some people try and recreate it in a way where we've never seen it. So all of a sudden, you go to a shopping cart and you go, this is a bit confusing. And people are creatures of habit, right? So if you give someone an experience that is really different, it's negative. It has negative impact.
Right.
So I kind of try and encourage people to say, look, in certain ways you can be creative. Of course you can. And we don't want every website or every platform to look exactly the same, but I don't think it's you have to be unique to stand out in the crowd. Like, yeah, for example, like the example I'll give you is that you go to some websites and it's very difficult to know where the menu is. Now, people want to be able to react to that. People don't want to have to think when it comes to the experience. The experience should be obvious and simple and easy to use. So a lot of people try and the major headache that happens generally in the agency space is that you'll get a marketing person who may have built 2 or 3 websites and will tell you that, she knows or he knows. And you as a supplier, which is something that I'm getting used to, but have to say, yes, you're right. Okay. And then, when they have a negative impact, then you show them through data. And I think that's kind of one of the key things is that people don't use data enough to really make decisions. They kind of go, well, I don't like it. Well, okay. You don't like it. Have you tested it? Have you read the data? No, I just don't like it. And then you have to kind of move on.
It's like if it's too unique or too creative, then people will be turned off by it.
Well, it'll confuse them. It'll be, I don't understand. And it might be great to engage with once or twice, but it probably isn't something you're going to go back to. I look at Craigslist. I look at Amazon. I look at the major sites that people engage with.
Yeah.
They're designed for the lowest common denominator.
Yeah, it's like I remember in college, one of my marketing classes, the professor said, if you see a commercial that you don't like and you say, why would they ever make a commercial like this? It's because it just wasn't targeted towards you. It was targeted towards someone else. Yeah. What do you think most companies tend to undervalue when they do their digital, when they design their digital experience?
So I think when people create digital experiences, or companies enter digital full stop, they underestimate how much it's going to actually cost them. So what they do is they say, great, I've got a budget. I've got enough money here. I'm going to build a platform for myself to market to, for myself to do e-commerce, and for my company to communicate to staff either through an intro. And they kind of get to that point and they know that they can build it, but they don't think forward from that. I always say to people that 1/3 of your budget is in the build phase and 2/3 is in the ongoing exploit the platforms and make it happen. Not necessarily maintenance, but how are you going to drive interaction? How are you going to drive people? So we install an intranet in an operation, and then we turn around and they say, it hasn't really had much take up. Right. Have you created any videos to show people how to use it? Have you sold the benefits? Have you created a newsletter? Oh, no, we just gave everyone a user ID and a password. And I think the onboarding process and the explanation of how the platform works and the marketing of that platform and the education process around what people do in terms of digital is really not even thought of. And then, a year down the track, the poor agency that built the website gets a call and, we built this platform and it hasn't produced any return. Right. Who's focused on the platform? We have a marketing person who also does our brochures, who also does our marketing. Right, okay. And tell me, have you got any physical stores? Yeah, of course. We have 10 physical stores. And how many staff do you have in each of those physical stores? Oh, we have a rotation of 20 to 30 staff. Okay. So think of your website as a physical store. Right? How can you not man it and properly staff it and then expect results? You're not going to get them. And so when you give them that parallel, they sort of start seeing that it isn't just technological, it's an ecosystem of work that you have to put in. And now with social media and all these new channels, Snapchat and so on, all the latest, and now LinkedIn being bought by Microsoft, it's like, okay, so I'm going to go to a website and immediately someone's going to know everything about me. And they're going to know who I know and so on. So it's amazing how much information people are going to have and be able to use.
What have been, since you launched Core DNA, what have been some of the biggest changes that you've made?
In terms of the platform or in terms of the market where I've come into?
Let's start with the platform.
So the first thing was we're an Australian company and we arrived in America in November. And although we had a few customers before we arrived, I always thought America and Australia were exactly the same. The reality is that we look the same. We kind of speak the same language, but culturally we're very different. So we've had to do quite a bit of work in terms of making sure we don't offend anyone in terms of the language, the way we use letters and so on. So that was quite an exercise to go and update all the content to do that. We've gotten really focused on the onboarding and making sure we help people maximize how they use the platform because and I'm sure many people have read that, only 10% of the platform gets used and so on because people kind of just get used to doing what they do. So we actively try and encourage people to try new things. And
how do you do that?
We use a bunch of tools that are a little bit intrusive. So when you log into a certain area and we say, hey, have you considered that there's something over here? We provide videos, we provide emails, newsletters to encourage people to kind of explore what's possible. In terms of arriving here, in terms of business, again, Boston, I would have thought is similar to Australia, but it's very different. So there's, I think, 24 million people in the whole of Australia, and there's over 100 million people up and down the East Coast. So the sort of market is enormous. But the way Bostonians do business is very different. They're very much not who you know and relationships and that kind of stuff. So, when I first arrived, I just thought I'd call people and they would answer. I learned that isn't the case. I then got introduced and the same person was very willing to talk to me, which I found, I get it. So I'm learning the art of kind of networking and meeting people and getting to know the community a little more.
If you were to start over again, is there anything you do differently?
A lot of people get asked that question and I've heard people answer it as, oh yeah, I would. I'd be more structured. I would have a better plan. I would do more sales, or I would build less product. I think for me is that when you start is a moment in time. And that moment in time is made up of so many different factors. What's going on in the economy, what's going on in the market, how people will receive your product, how they'll receive your service. So there is too many factors to kind of be able to say, yeah, I would do exactly this if I ever went again. So effectively, in Boston for the last 6 months, I've started again. And I came with a plan. I came with a roadmap. I came with a business plan with how much I was going to sell and what I was going to do. And I found very quickly that until you're actually out there doing, you don't know. And so I suppose one thing I would say to people that when they start is work out your goal and work backwards from your goal. In other words, work backwards. So if you want to sell to someone a product, work back to how many people you have to call, how many meetings you have to have, how many demos you have to do, and then use those metrics every day. I've got one saying I always say to my salespeople: activity leads to results. Right? The right activity will lead to results. And so I kind of say if I was to start again in any business, the first thing I would work out is who's my buyer, who I want to target, and then work back from that to what do I need to start the sales process, right? Because there is a process, and there's generally discovery and research, comparison, buy, support, and then advocacy, right? There's these stages, and so generally, if you've got a product that solves a problem, and in some cases people have a product with no problem, and so they're wondering why people don't want to use their product. Yeah. So does that answer the question? Yeah.
Is there anything that at the time when you were growing Core DNA that seemed small but has turned out to play a major role?
Yeah. I think in terms of stubbornness, if I look back on, I could have blown this company up so many times. Number one, I could have left it so many times and gone, I've given up. But in terms of determination and stubbornness and continued stubbornness, let me tell you, because where I am in my life right now, I've successfully built a great business in Australia. I leave that in someone else's hands and come to start another business and go through the same heartache. And some mornings you wake up and go, why have I done this? Great city, beautiful summer weather, but why have I gotten out there? And you wake up and you go, slap yourself a little and go, no, we know the plan, we understand. So I think people have always said I'm quite stubborn, and it's not a big thing, but I think that that's one factor that continues to, and to my detriment in some cases, because you're not always going to have a positive outcome being stubborn. But in terms of growing a company and being told your proprietary, your software, and this whole concept of what proprietary means, and there's free software, no one's going to ever pay for software again, and why would you ever want to release a platform that does content, and so on and so on. And I just look back at them and I say, the market is huge. I don't need to win everyone. I only need to win a small amount of people.
Yeah. When you wake up and you have those thoughts of, why am I doing this? What keeps you going?
A bit of it is failure. Like, even though I don't feel like I failed, so I think a lot of it goes back to childhood, like getting kind of some sort of recognition from family, well done. Like a lot of this stuff, when you look at it, it's never about money, or at least it isn't for me. It doesn't get me out of bed. I don't go, oh, awesome, I'm going to make a deal today. I think the hunt is really interesting. Meeting people is really great. And jumping those hurdles one at a time. And whatever those little hurdles are that you jump and you go, yep, got over that one. Mm-hmm. Now to the next one. So that keeps me going. The dream, the light at the end of the tunnel in terms of being able to be recognized that, yep, we have achieved. I think that keeps you going. And I've said this to a number of people here in Boston, that I could have stayed happily and run a lifestyle business in Australia and retired in the next, 20 years, 30 years, whenever. But I've decided, no, that's not enough. Let's create some more bookmarks. Because I look back on those and I go, hey, that was cool. Now, there's a few dark bookmarks that I'm not proud of, but you can't always have, there can't always be positive experiences. Sometimes you may make a mistake and you have to learn from those mistakes.
What would you say is the most important thing you've learned running your own company? I
think it's resilience, right? To run your own company, you have to be resilient. And what happens is, and I see it here at the office, when young companies start, the problems they face, they seem insurmountable. So, you start with a small company, you've got these problems, they seem insurmountable. Then a year later, those problems seem really small, and then these other problems become insurmountable. And what I've discovered is, over the years, that what you think is insurmountable at the time, upon reflection, isn't that big. And your ability to kind of go, I can get over this. It's okay. It's not the end of me. It's just another step in where I'm going. And so being able to be resilient through those times and not falling into a low where you kind of just give up and go that, well, I'm defeated. Get up, clean yourself off and keep going.
So is it when you face those challenges, is it just, thinking to yourself that this is a small thing. It's just a blip on the whole timeline. It's not a huge.
I just look at it as, what's my alternatives? What's the worst thing that can happen? Okay. That's the worst thing. All right. Well, I know what the worst thing is. Now let's try and work out somewhere between the most positive thing that can come out of this and somewhere in the middle. And there's always a middle ground. Even in tough negotiations, even in times when you're having difficulties with staff or customers, people aren't inherently bad. You have to start off with that point, and you have to kind of go, look, there'll be some compromise somewhere along the way, and it won't be as bad as I think, and it won't be as good as I think.
What advice would you give to first-time entrepreneurs?
Okay, this is a new one that I've recently understood, and it's not mine, but I basically say it to myself fairly regularly. So second time over, I kind of back in the startup thing. So I always, one of the things that I say, there's two things that I say. The first one is, failure doesn't come from the things you don't know. Failure comes from the things you know to be true that aren't, right? And I think in many cases, and I've done this in the past where that can't be done. I know that can't be done. That's not true. That's not true. I know that's not true. But okay, it might not be true, but it's okay to listen to someone and maybe, just maybe, you might have it wrong. So that's kind of my number one at the moment. And my number two is integrity is what people do when no one's watching. Right?
I like that. And
for me, in business, I'm all about values. Like I've run my business on values and I have 4 values: work and play as a team, business focused, interesting ideas, and straight talking. Those are my 4 values. I always want to contribute in those ways. And so integrity is one of those things that people can talk about, but you notice it when they're not looking. And I have to say, one of the things that I love about Boston is there's a lot of integrity here, at least in the circles that I'm around. So, and the example I give people back home is I say, my Amazon parcels arrive down in the foyer and they stay there for 2 or 3 days.
Nobody takes them.
And no one touches them. Well, they may look at them. Hey, what's in here? But there's no one actually taking them. And I think that, it takes a lot. Anyway, that's kind of.
What do you think? How does someone develop integrity?
I think through experiences. And they have to have both positive and negative. It's more than just experiences. So from a young age, I've always traveled all over the world. I've seen cultures. I've understood cultures. I've felt cultures. I've lived in them. So that's one aspect. The second aspect is your upbringing in terms of family values and all those things. And then the third aspect is really your interactions with other people. So I truly believe in karma. So I always approach with a positive attitude. I never look at what does this person want. Although I have days where I might say, hey, half empty, oh, come on, we're in the half empty today. The glass is half empty. But, you kind of push yourself to try and experience, to listen to people, to have a laugh. It's important to have a laugh, and it's important to care. I always approach things as how can I help you, rather than what's in it for me.
Yeah.
And so when you bring all those things together, I think those are the things that help you create a level of integrity. And there are various levels of integrity. I mean, depending on the person. So yeah, I always live by the mantra, that integrity mantra.
Going back to your first point, there's a saying, I think it's strong opinions loosely held. Just like, you can be firm in your opinion, but always be open to the idea that you might be wrong.
I'll give you a rude one if you might cut this one out.
Go for it.
But it's opinions are like arseholes. Everyone's got one.
That's good.
Anyway, they might find the chop, I think.
No, I'll keep it. I want to go now into the rapid fire questions. Not necessarily rapid fire answers, though, so feel free. If you could have one billboard anywhere with anything on it, where would you put it and what would it say?
Wow, that's a tough question. One billboard. Technology matters. And I would put it probably on a main highway somewhere.
Do you think people don't value it enough?
I don't know how it happened, but all of a sudden, technology isn't important. Well, it actually is, because it's the foundation that everything's built on. So I'm probably a little biased in terms of being somewhat technical and loving technology. Mm-hmm. I still code from time to time just to relax. And the tech team back in Australia get very upset with me, but oh well, I own the company. Get over it. So I would probably have a billboard at technology matters and just sort of, because I think people have gotten too caught up with that it doesn't need to be worried about, and more and more as the internet starts to become far more mature, you're going to see a lot of dangerous activity on the internet, a lot of hacking, a lot of stuff that's kind of covert, and I think it's important that people take a good look at it, because it becomes an integral part of your business. Those those technologies are really what drive your business. And now with this cloud and everyone's data everywhere and so on, then I know that I struggle to understand how it all hangs together. I'd hate to think what a CEO of a large retail chain thinks when they think about that.
What's another startup in Boston that you're most excited about?
Enrico with his Botkeeper. I don't know. There's I don't know if you've
I've heard of it.
Yeah, the guys are doing great. I think what I love about that company is that it's very passionate. They have a very strong focus on what they can achieve for small business in terms of accounting and so on. And every time you talk to Enrico, he's very fiery, and he'll tell you how he's going and what he's progressing and some of the challenges. He has a very open book, which I love. Again, one of the things I think are really important in entrepreneurs is to be honest and not necessarily, how are things going? Awesome. Have you made any money this month? No. So kind of have a reality check. And I find that his team are really good people. The guys at Manubo, who live near us, they have an analytics platform for e-commerce. Again, we're both going through the same journey. So it's interesting to see how two startups enter the market and look for customers and engage with customers. And Tim, who heads up the sales team over there, is really an interesting guy with, lots of experience, lots of grey hair. And I kind of learned a lot from him.
What advice would you give to your 25-year-old self?
I would say don't do an MBA.
Why is that?
I think there's a lot to be learned from doing rather than listening and learning. I think there has to be a balance. And one of the things, and I know there's a lot of, and Boston's probably it's an interesting city in terms of that, where people have tick boxes of, I've gone to this school, I've done this MBA, I've worked at this office, I've started this company, I've sold this company, I've now restarted the second company, where it's kind of like a rite of passage. I think if I was 25 today, I would say take more chances. It's okay. No one's left out on the streets. Like you're smart people, you will find a way. So it's okay to take a few more chances. I think I took, at 25, I was so into my career that I thought that I was holding up the bank with my work, like the share price would fall if I didn't go to work the next day. So I kind of think, don't take yourself so seriously in terms of your work. Do take your work seriously, but it's not the only thing you need to take seriously. I think have experiences by meeting people in different countries, different cultures. So work in different places like I'm doing now, because I've learned more in the last 6 months than I had in the last 3 years. And that's kind of interesting, because my job is one of running a company, and running a company means I have a team of salespeople, I have a team of project managers, I have a team of technologists. So all I'm doing is the puppeteer managing people. Whereas here, I'm the hustler. I'm out there talking to people. So I suppose 25-year-old, I would say go and get lots of experiences and have fun. Have fun along the way. Because it isn't a sprint. It's not a sprint. It's a marathon. So you've got to pace yourself. It's a 40-year to 50-year marathon.
What do you think most...
You've just sat there going, oh my God, I didn't realize that.
No, I think that's great advice. What do you think most first-time entrepreneurs are afraid of that they shouldn't be?
I think there's a lot of ego in being an entrepreneur, in entrepreneurism, if that's such a word. So there's a lot of ego. So I remember starting off, and the first thing we did when we first started the business is we were in my garage and we went and bought the best of the equipment, bought brand new desks, and we spent money on all the branding because it was representative of who we were and of our startup and how important our startup was. And I think that in many cases our ego gets in the way of good decision making, and sometimes people don't drop the ego, and it doesn't allow them to listen enough. And I think listening and getting advice and getting people around you that have done it, who understand it, who who have been through the hardships and using them to help you through those, sort of through the startup phase and through the ideation and through getting your first customer is really important. And I find that everyone knows everything because they read it I did a Google search. You've got to have some experience. And maybe that's just a sign of my age. Like I still remember beepers. I was talking about beepers today and everyone was like, what? What's a beeper?
I remember beepers. I was young, but I remember. Do you think that, were there times in your either first company or company now where the ego got in the way?
There's two things. I think I wasn't present enough in some respects to listen properly. I was too busy talking. And then if I heard something that I didn't agree with, I wasn't prepared to hear the reasons and ask the questions why and keep asking why until I got tired of asking why. In most cases, you'll ask why and you'll go, yeah, no, I don't believe that. And off you go. Mm-hmm. The reality is there's more to it. You've got to dig into understanding what people want. And I feel like people are just too ready to go, he doesn't know what he's talking about or she doesn't know what she's talking about. I've experienced this in my short tenure as an entrepreneur, and I know. It comes back to what I said earlier. Yeah. Your failure is about things that you think are true but aren't necessarily true.
Do you have any favorite books or blogs?
Books. God, I'm reading a lot of SaaS books at the moment, and a lot of books on VCs, and I don't have one off the top of my head. In terms of blogs, I have a collection of content blogs. I read a number of VC blogs and just understand what's going on. The SaaStr guys, I follow them a fair bit. There's a big community around SaaStr. I think they're doing a really good job in providing the content and information for SaaS companies. I also look at things like what's going on in Australia, which is really weird. Mm-hmm. Like I kind of, who cares? But, I care.
Yeah.
I also find some of the political blogs kind of interesting at the moment. I think you guys are in an interesting time. Yeah, so that's kind of where I'm at.
What's something about you that most people don't know?
What's something about me? What's something about me they don't know? I'm kind of shy. I know it doesn't come across that way, but I get nervous very easily when it comes to speaking engagements. Like, I can't believe it, like I've been doing some of this stuff now for nearly more than 15 years. And, and someone's about to arrive to interview and I'm like, I feel like, I hope I do a good job, Like I'm a bit of a perfectionist in terms of wanting, people to get the most out of what I offer them. And, I have this thing where I like to be in a liked relationship, where what people think of me matters. So a lot of people don't, in some cases you're the big man, you walk away, but it does hurt sometimes if, people don't like you. Why don't you like me?
What do you think makes the Boston startup scene unique?
I think, there's so much. Look, I think over the next 5 years, my view is Boston's going to outpace both the Valley and New York.
Yeah,
I really believe that, and the reason is that it's placed in an environment where the government is supporting it. Number one, number two, it's a really easy place to work. It isn't difficult. Great transport system. You've got great office space. You've still got space. I think it's trying to bat like it wants to be good, whereas the other two places are like, we are good, and it offers the entrepreneur a really good balance between business and entrepreneurship in terms of venture capitalists and real expert people. So it has all the universities in terms of talent. It has the accessibility of all the interns, so you can meet really smart people. And most of the people like being here. I mean, it's got a really good young person vibe for people that want to live here. I think the Valley is too distant in terms of if you want to do business, you're running up and down the highway all the time. I think it's become very expensive to live there. I think it's like the big boys go there, so that kind of the startup community struggles a little bit to get some foothold. And I think New York is always going to be a really crowded, financial services focused place, whereas Boston has the financial services, has the manufacturing, has the biotech, and has the tech, and it's kind of really nicely melded.
So we're sitting here in WeWork, and I think, don't quote me on this, that WeWork has more square footage in Boston than they do in San Francisco.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
I think that was fairly recently that it's more here now. So now, just to close out, where can people find out more about Core DNA?
They can go to our website at www.coredna.com, or they can email me at sam@coredna.com, or go to my LinkedIn profile, Sam Saltis. If you do a search on Google, you'll find most of my information. I'm always open to talk to young entrepreneurs. I love it. I get an energy from the young guys who are trying stuff, who are pushing the boundaries, who aren't content, like this whole contentment. So yeah, that's me.
Do you have any parting thoughts, advice, or suggestions for people listening?
Look, I think that the one piece of advice I'd give to people is never listen to anyone who's going to try and put you down. Never do that. Never listen to anyone who says it can't be done. Never listen to anyone who finds excuses to tell you why it can't be done. Because no matter what you're doing, if you're passionate about it, if you love it, and no matter how much money you make, you wouldn't care, you'd still love to do that, then go for it, right? Don't sit there and listen to everyone who's going to give you kind of that negative. Now, take their advice on, as I said earlier, in terms of why are they asking, and ask the why questions. But if people are just being negative to be negative, and there's a lot of people out there that will tell you a number of reasons why what you're doing won't work, just move forward. And if you think that it's too hard, and just go to sleep on it for the night. Wake up the next morning, it'll be okay. It can never be a disaster. And the worst that can happen is that you'll fold it, you'll take away a lot of knowledge and a lot of experience, that the next time you start, you'll go, right, I made these mistakes. I'm not going to make those mistakes again.
Sam, thank you so much. This has been a blast today. I really enjoyed it.
Thanks, Nick.
If you enjoyed this episode, please go and subscribe to this podcast on iTunes and write a review. By subscribing, you'll get all of my new episodes automatically fresh onto your podcast app. So make sure to do so, and it really helps me out in the rankings and with acquiring users. Remember, all show notes can be found at startupbostonpodcast.com. Thank you for listening, and until next time, if you have any feedback, ideas for guests, or just want to say hi, you can reach me at nick@startupbostonpodcast.com. That's NIC@startupbostonpodcast.com. Cheers.